Thank you, Sir
Graham, and thank you for calling me so early. I rise to speak today with a heavy heart because I don't think we should be here. This should not be something we are having to debate, and I am furious. But my fury is nothing compared to the deep-set harm that this announcement has already caused to the transgender community. They have been harmed by us saying that they do not deserve the same rights and protections as their LGBT brothers and sisters. The decision was made, in fact the entire ban was almost cancelled, shamefully, if it were not for the actions of backbenchers on the Conservative side to make sure it's protected. But the entire debate, and the entire manner of this debate, should shame us all, because we need more compassion on all sides, because there should not be any sides on this. So much of this debate is being misrepresentative and bears no reality to what a ban would really do. This ban is about preventing those who use so-called therapy as a smokescreen for their homophobic and transphobic exorcisms, who claim that LGBTQ+ people do not deserve to love, be loved, or live their lives as they truly are. So today, rather than arguing why we need an inclusive ban, I want to focus on the claim that any ban on conversion therapy would allow for only one form of therapy, so-called affirmative model. This is usually accompanied by a claim that the ban on trans conversion therapy is designed to push so-called gender ideology. I would like to know how these groups claiming this have seen the legislation, because I know none of us have. I know the Minister probably hasn't, because it hasn't been drafted. Conversion therapy often takes the form of one-directional talking therapies conducted by quacks in unregulated settings. There can only be one outcome: rejecting your trans self. Now, regulated psychotherapists and similar professions have always insisted that exploratory therapy has no set outcome, but that is what conversion therapy does. What our children, and indeed anyone trans of any age, deserves and needs is to have fully explorative and challenging conversations with accredited and regulated individuals. Those who actually adhere to ethical tests, those who actually would be regulated and won't push predetermined outcomes in either direction. A regulated therapist would never say that someone must act on their attractions or feelings, or that they must eliminate them. And surely no one here can disagree with that. Now, some claim that gay and lesbian people are being forced to convert into transgender persons. Now, there are always isolated cases, you can never say never, but let's not suggest this is some widespread conspiracy. Even if you did ascribe to this belief, this legislation would help you, because it would ensure that critical conversations take place with professionals and not the well-meaning. Now, let's take on the claims that a ban on CT would criminalise health practitioners, as my honourable friend started. Then how does the Royal College of Psychiatrists, the British Psychological Society, the Albany Trust, the British Medical Association, Mind, Relate, the Royal College of General Practitioners, Association for Christian Counsellors, and many more stand behind a ban? Conversion therapy has been rejected because it is the psychiatric and psychological profession precisely reject it because it's the opposite of an open-ended exploration. It is a therapy with only one stopping point. It's not about keeping choices, but eliminating them entirely. And that's why mental health practitioners back this legislation. It's not going to criminalise them, nor teachers, nor parents who want to have conversations with their children. And I know this because I have worked since my election to secure a ban on conversion therapy. I came to this place saying that I would help deliver one. Now, the discussions have been methodical, serious and cautious. And licensed bodies want to get this right, and they want serious safeguards in place. But I also want to be abundantly clear, given this search for safeguards, that psychological professions have been clear and unequivocal that trans conversion therapy is a definable concept. They might have different views about many other things, but they agreed on this. Now, looking at the Cass review, which many cite as a reason to exclude transgender people from a ban, the Cass review is unequivocal. It calls for expanded support for trans healthcare and better service provision. Hilary Cass herself has said that it is her view that her work does not impede the bringing forward of a conversion therapy bill including trans people, and any bill does not need to wait for the end of her work. So why is her work being appropriated against a ban? Her work is well underway. Finally, I just wish to clear up some of the misnomers around this bill, and I'm sorry I'm going to slightly run over. Despite how hard others are pushing to misrepresent it, this ban is not about transgender people in sport, or prisons, medical interventions, procedures, nor gender-neutral toilets. The government does not propose the ban would define gender identity in legislation, noting the fact we already have the Gender Recognition Act and hate crime legislation that acknowledges transgender people, and nor are LGBT community groups asking for gender identity to be defined or to introduce it into law. So why are so-called lobby organisations trying to say that we are trying to do this? I also wish to make one thing very clear. An inclusive ban on conversion therapy is not some woke frontier for those who want to suppress freedom of speech. This isn't some new frontier for politicians to weaponise in some culture war that they think is vote-winning. Because standing up for my rights, and I would hope that colleagues would agree that I have fought for the rights of women since I came to this place, is not incompatible with fighting for the rights of others. Women aren't people with cervixes, we're women. I don't chest feed, I breastfeed my baby. Of course biology matters, but these positions are not at war with one another. If we can come together, we can find mutual understanding, because this isn't a backdoor effort for those wishing to make this a battle about rights. It's not a backdoor effort to criminalise dissent from gender ideology, and it is about punishing practices that leave real and enduring psychological scars and holding those to account who cause this misery. The only people who have to fear this ban are those quacks and charlatans who profit off the bigotry and torture, who believe that their views are so superior to the others. So let's protect our children and leave the professionals to do their jobs, include transgender people, those to protect them from those so divorced from decency and compassion, so hell-bent on their worldview and their brand of torture that they would cause people to seek to end up depressed with severe mental suffering and suicide. I, for one, will not stand for a ban that devalues my transgender friends, and I will amend this legislation if it comes forward without trans people included. And I will not stand for the division of the LGBT community that gives the green light to bigots to continue torturing our trans friends. So I call on the government to do what is right. I call on the government to bring forward this work on transgender rights and inclusion within the bill that they have promised, and I ask them to stand by and give the protections to those who need it so very urgently. Thank you so very much.
Alan Smith.